Author Joris Karl Huysmans once stated, "Worshipping the devil is no more insane than worshipping God." It is precisely at the moment when positivism is at its high water mark that mysticism stirs into life, and the follies of occultism begin. In 1985, recent film school graduate Will Allen found what appeared to be an exciting community in LA. While searching for the meaning of life and community, Allen was lured by a charismatic South American-born guru known as Michel. With little hesitation, he joined Buddhafield, a group where love and enlightenment flowed in abundance. It wasn't until 22 years later that Allen realized he belonged to a cult. Allen's film, Holy Hell, tells his tale and the secrets of the Buddhafield, along with its leader. The paranormal aftermath. Actor, singer, songwriter, and director Jared Leto was one of the producers of Holy Hell. While visiting the ghosts of Buddhafield's past, Jared was dealing with supposed ghosts of his new home in Laurel Canyon. So ditch the Flavor Aid, grab a smoothie, and slip into your favorite Speedo. This is the true crime and paranormal aftermath of the Buddhafield cult. Namaste forever.
Hi, this is Two Girls on a Bench,
the podcast. So we're two writers who tend to procrastinate just a bit.
We like to snack. We like to talk.
We don't have time to write, but we have time to do this podcast.
We certainly do. Join us on the bench.
Listen in.
At number 2 Girls on a Bench.
Hey guys, welcome back to Hollyweird Paranormal. And if you're just new to Hollyweird Paranormal, we are a Hollywood true crime and paranormal podcast based out of Hollyweird, California. So we talk about crimes that are in and around the Hollywood area that make up this crazy state of California.
Yes.
So you heard it right. In the intro, we are going to dive into one of the most interesting cults in Hollywood, in LA, and that is the Buddhafield cult.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. It is a very, very interesting cult because they were a throwback to the old cults here. Mm-hmm. So what we're going to do, guys, is real quickly, we're going to go into the definition of a cult, how it's defined, and how it all started, and then why LA played as such a big hotbed for these crazy cults.
Yes.
And then we can't proceed with this podcast without talking about the 2016 documentary Holy Hell, aka Holy Shit, what did I just see?
Yes, that's its long festival name.
It is, and FYI, yes, Bryce is wearing his tangerine Speedos.
Yes.
I don't know if you saw that on Instagram,
they
guys.
They can hear it in my voice, I'm sure. He sounds like Tangerine.
I know. Ooh. Yes, I told you that you were looking very svelte. No wonder you got those Speedos.
Thank you.
Yeah, that you're looking really good. Orange is definitely your color.
Oh, thank you. Oh, my God. Ooh.
All right, guys. So why don't we open with the biggest question? What is a cult? According to Wikipedia and Webster Dictionary, it's a system of religious veneration and devotion directed toward a particular figure or object. For example, the cult of St. Olaf, or another description is a relatively small group of people having religious beliefs or practices regarded by others as strange and or sinister. Ooh. So why cults? And what was the earlier, how do they spawn? What was the thing about cults? Mm-hmm. So we had to go way, way back into the 1930s. So in the beginning of the 1930s, cults became the object of sociological study in the context of the study of religious behavior. So from the 40s, the Christian countercult movement had opposed some sects and new religious movements, and it labeled them as cults for their unchristian, unorthodox beliefs. So the secular anti-cult movement began in the 1970s, and it opposed certain groups, often charging them with a mind control or partially motivated in reaction to acts of violence committed by some of their members, aka Manson family.
What up, fam?
I know, fam squad. So some of the claims and actions of the anti-cult movements have been disputed by scholars and by the news media, leading to further public controversy. So the term new religious movement refers to religions which have appeared since the mid-1800s. So this was before the word cult came about. And many, not all of them, have been considered to be cults. There have been subcategories of cults that, definitely come around. So you have the doomsday cults, personality cults, political cults, destructive cults, racist cults, polygamist and terrorist cults. And various national governments have reacted to cult-related issues in different ways, and this has sometimes led to other controversies. So perhaps it's more useful to discern what a religious movement is or what a cult is by comparing its impact on its members' lives. So the biggest question while researching that I came up with is, does it complement or control? So according to Jayanti Tam of the Huffington Post, at their best, healthy religions and organizations complement rich, full lives by offering balance, community, comfort. At their worst, they lapse. They lapse into vehicles demanding control. Cults limit lives into narrow, claustrophobic existence whose singular purpose is the cult itself. So it just narrows the follower's path. But why is it? Here's another big question. Why is LA or why has LA played as such a hotbed for cults? Now, I'll go into a list of these earlier cults that started in LA so you guys can get a really good idea, especially for you, Bryce. Are you pretty familiar with the earlier cults?
I think I know like the big players, I would say.
Oh, yeah.
But if you really
Scientology?
Yeah, hello. Yeah, but if you really start looking into it, it's like even these little minor ones. They're
Yes.
like, oh, okay, they're actually everywhere.
They're everywhere, from
Great.
the smallest to the most popular ones. So starting from the earlier cults, we have the Mazdanan, which was a cult of sun worshippers who fasted on and engaged in self-torture to drive out the devils.
Sure,
I
as
know.
you do, yes.
Then we have the Helios cult, which was a love cult. The I Am cult, which was a Great Depression cult started by Guy Ballard, which was supposed to bring its followers success and wealth. And then you have the Aetherius Society, which was the first alien cult in LA that wanted to save the world using radionic energy.
Bless. Well, someone's got to do it.
I know. Why not a cult? Nice science. Believed in past lives, ESP, and reincarnation, as well as hypnotism. And then our favorite Church of Scientology,
Bless.
It was started by Ron Hubbard in 1954, 4 years before founding the Synanon, the Santa Monica-based drug rehab that evolved into another dangerous cult. Then you had the Tensegrity cult. I think I pronounced it correctly. It was a cult based on shamanism, yoga, kung fu, and our favorite, peyote.
Ooh,
You got it? Start a cult.
I love it. It's the next logical step.
And then the famous cult in the 70s, one of the famous ones, was The Source. Founded with, oh yeah, you remember The
It was a
Source?
big one, yeah.
That was a big one. So it was founded with proceeds from a Sunset Strip health food cafe of the same name. And the source was Father Yode's tribal community of more than 100 white robe seekers who moved into a Los Feliz mansion in 1972. Yeah. I heard he slept, there was a documentary in this one too. He slept with, I think, half the women or majority of the women in the cult, and they all birthed his children.
Oh.
I think he had a total of 40 kids. Wow. Yeah. So the source, I know, depleted within time, and now a coffee bean sits in its place.
Which is its own kind of cult,
It
I would
is
say.
the coffee bean
Yeah,
cult.
Yeah, yeah.
We're part of Starbucks cult.
We really are.
We are. We have our Starbies
Yes.
today.
Clink, clink.
Clink, clink. And then we have the movement of spiritual inner awareness. Beliefs combine elements of Hinduism, Buddhism, and Sikhism. And our favorite family, the Manson family. Of course, they were the desert commune / cult formed in California in the late 60s that was led by Charles Manson. And the group consisted of approximately over 100 of his followers who lived an unconventional lifestyle.
That is certainly a way of saying it.
Yes, using hallucinogenic drugs. They were also responsible for the Tate and LaBianca murders. And then, of course, we hit the Buddhafield cult that we're definitely going to spill a lot of tea on right now. The cult built on beauty, yoga, and Speedos.
Well, that was the thing I wanted to briefly interject is that I think one of the main things that I find so fascinating about cults is that they are an inverse reflection of the times. And so you sort of see the cults, of course, the depression cult is about success and financial stability and pulling yourself up out of the mire that the country was in.
Yeah.
And then you kind of move forward into the early 50s and 60s cults, which are about the exploration of the space age and sci-fi. I mean, Scientology is a foundation of L. Ron Hubbard's sci-fi books. That's really one of the main pillars that continues to fund the church for some reason. And then as we move into the 70s, they start implementing a lot more Eastern teaching, mysticism, yoga starts catching on as a workout method, and then people start adopting that into their spirituality. And then as we move into the 80s, the Buddhafield cult is such a prime example of yuppieism and beauty culture and consumerism culture. And it all, LA, for better or for worse, is kind of a tastemaker in the country, what LA and New York, what the coasts find. And this isn't to say whether one is better or worse, but just in terms of pop culture, it does start on the coast and then filter into the country, if you will. And so I think that's why you can see their cults are a sort of dark mirror of what's going on in pop culture in the country. And that so the Buddhafield were perfectly positioned in the mid 80s of this cult for literally just beautiful people. Okay.
Yeah, they were a major throwback to the cults of the 60s and 70s. They ditched the sex, drugs, and rock and roll, and they just stuck with smoothies and Speedos and yoga. Yeah. They were a major throwback. But no, that was a good little...
And a total embodiment of Los Angeles. They're all about eating clean. And honestly, if you heard the transcript of his teaching, you would be well, that sounds like someone today. I'm on a cleanse. I've been hiking in nature. I'm just getting really in touch with myself. I'm just detaching from all the things that are holding me back. Those are all the teacher's words, but they still apply, and that's still a very LA culture type thing. Clean eating, clean living, outdoor, quote unquote, connecting.
So what you're saying is LA is a cult in general. You come to LA, boom, you're already in a cult. You don't even know it. Yeah. Yeah. I will, be honest. I got into cleanses and juices and working out and being more tanned than usual. It is a cult in its own sense. Bless. But we'll definitely hit on that note.
That's just my little thought. As you're listening,
that's a great interjection right there.
It's just so amazing because what they started out as, in this country, obviously, we could talk about ancient Grecian cults and all of that, or the occult, but I think in this country in particular, they really reflect the times that they are spawned in.
100% agree with you. Yeah, I love it too. And
Thanks, America.
We're gonna hit on several of these notes. Yes. And how could we forget, guys, the People's Temple? Promoting racial equality and economic fairness, founder Jim Jones led 909 of his followers to drink cyanide-laced Flavor Aid in 1978 in Guyana. And that leaves us with our favorite cult, Heaven's Gate, which was a UFO religious cult based in San Diego, California, that was founded in 1974 by Marshall Applewhite, who led a mass suicide in 1997. If you were not born during that time, Google it. It's so crazy. It's such a crazy, crazy cult. We're definitely going to touch on them eventually. So here's another big question, too. Why was LA such a hotbed for cults? Why a lot of the cults flourished here? And to tell you the truth, I listened to an episode of, it was an episode of Cults from this podcast called LA Not So Confidential. And they're really great, podcast based out of LA, of course. Hi. You're gonna get your shout outs soon, guys.
Oh, it's coming.
It's in this episode. So their hosts, FYI, are actual forensic psychologists. For one.
Obsessed.
And they only have 10 episodes. Of course they do, because they're busy.
Yeah.
They're like, guys, like, our schedules are so busy. We're so LA.
Good for them. Good for them to have lives.
No, they're really cool. So it's Dr. Scott and Dr. Shiloh explain in this episode that in the early 1700s to late 1800s, cults started in Southern California due to the lack of medical professionals. And SoCal was a land of nature and mysticism. Like, if you think about it, it's covered in mountains and greenery. Yes. It's so unique. There's a mystery here. Mm-hmm. And of course, like we had, in the earlier times, we had all these Indian tribes that resided here. So people kind of went towards the holistic route with this influence.
Totally.
Then Dr. Scott also mentions that in the mid-1900s, there was the influence of traditional medicine from the Chinese immigrants, like what we discussed in episode 2 of the Cecil Hotel. So Chinese immigrants flourished here, and they brought a lot of their traditional beliefs and medicines here. And with that came a lot of spirituality and curiosity. So within time, people were drawn more and more towards spiritualism and holistic healing. And of course, the world of spiritualism, you can learn more about this from, Peter Ackroyd's book, A History of Ghosts, because they also dive way deep into that world. Yes. But it's so true, because like medicine during that time was not that great.
Right.
And people were like, I don't know what else to do. Mm-hmm. So here were these other outlets, which makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, so we're going to go into the Buddhafield cult.
Ooh, yes.
All right, here's a little tidbit. It started in 1985 in West Hollywood, WeHo, by Michel Rostand. So Michel, FYI, is a former ballet dancer and, surprise, gay porn actor. Surprise.
They always are.
True. Frequently clad in little more than a Speedo, striking dramatic poses and leveling, yet like smoky, hypnotizing gazes, while he spoke in an intriguing accent of indeterminate national origin. Mm-hmm. That was another thing, is like, while watching this documentary, where was he from?
I have no idea.
And it sounded so bad.
I know.
It sounded really, really bad. He preached a blend of Buddhism, Hinduism, and New Age mysticism that the West Hollywood crowd found absolutely in and irresistible. Mm-hmm. Like you said, it was like this was the thing in LA. So people were like, oh, this is new and this is different. So this cult, cult, because they blink, they really didn't believe they were a cult. Mm-hmm. Like that was an insult.
Yeah, I think you would call them the anti-cult.
They were
Which isn't that just religion, but okay.
But no, they're not a cult or anti-cult. They're a group who liked yoga and music and dancing and listening to Michel talk in his fake accent. So the cult embraced self-help, yoga, the upkeep of physical appearances. But they were also a cult that group that drove into community service. So they were known as the beauty cult, yoga cult. And in the mid-90s, the cult eventually moves to Austin and they stay there for a while before they disbanded. And then, Michel ends up going to Hawaii. We'll get into that later.
Yes.
The leader, the teacher, Michel, did get some legitimate training, apparently, in counseling, hypnosis, therapy, and acting. Mm-hmm. So the members had to pay for their therapy sessions with Michel at one point, or what they would call their cleansing sessions, for $50 an hour. That's how much it cost them. So in the Buddhafield cult, they did communal living and part-time volunteer work for the leader, some public service, which seemed more genuine than Scientology, in my opinion.
Totally.
They were all about the community, and Scientology was all about that money, all right? So they helped 2 paraplegics on a daily basis and made them even a part of their group. They would dance, they would sing, meditate, and they were very close to nature and very close to each other. At one point, they built a dance theater to train in ballet with Michel.
It is like...
It's all in that documentary.
They show the photo of the theater, and I was like, oh my God, it's
like
breathtaking.
It
is
is.
This beautiful cathedral up on like a mountain vista. I'm like, yo,
exactly.
Built this?
It was built to perfection.
It's insane.
And not to mention, like, they were building like structure after structure. And Michel was like, no, it's not perfect. No, it's not right. And then finally they got it right. Like, oh my God, it was beautiful. So here's the thing about Michel. He was actually born Jaime Gomez, according to Holy Hell. Now, like Charles Manson, Jaime Gomez chased fame. Michel came to America to be a movie star and briefly appeared in Rosemary's Baby. I posted it on Instagram. He had a non-speaking part.
I watched it and missed it.
Yeah,
And then I had to like
blink your
rewind
eye.
it. And I was like, oh yeah, I guess he's in it. Okay.
It's one of those things, Bryce, like where you're like, wait, did you catch it? Wait, go back. 5 times you have to rewind and then pause it at the right second, right? Yeah. As Buddhafield members later discovered, he starred in gay porn and, according to speculation, even dabbled in the dark arts. Now, when those fields didn't pan out, Michel adopted a role of a lifetime self-appointed prophet. Attracted to Michel's messages of healing and self-fulfillment, newcomers often gave themselves over to Buddhafield readily, calling him the teacher. They ditched functioning society and moved into one of Buddhafield's several houses together. Rape survivors, for example, felt cleansed, and lost souls found salvation through Michel's tutelage and their newfound family. In joining Buddhafield, some sought to escape society's authoritative decrees or replace drug habits with spiritual highs. Others were tossed out of their homes or contending with trauma or even battling disillusionment with their respective religions. Most maintained low-end jobs to pay rent, but they rarely communicated with the people who were not a part of the roughly 100-member organization. Life as they knew it ended, and for more than 2 decades, they absolutely loved it. Then we come out with this interesting documentary
Yes.
in 2016 that was 2 decades in the making. Holy Hell is a rich footage that was directed by Will Allen and shot for 22 years with the Buddhafield cult. Much of it focuses on the leader who called himself Michel, or the teacher, and it was a leader who spent much of his time in Speedos and Maui Jim Ray-Ban sunglasses.
Bless.
So the week that Holy Hell came out, CNN reached out to Michel. They asked him, what did you thought of the film? And he called the film pure fiction, designed to create drama, fear, and persecution. I'm trying to figure out how he would have said it in his accent, like create drama. Fear.
I know, it's like transatlantic and like a little bit of French and a little bit of Spanish, like all mixed together. Like what is I can like barely understand him. How did anyone follow his teachings? Like I can't understand him.
I couldn't understand what he was saying. It was so uncomfortable to sit through some of those scenes.
Oh my god, yeah.
So, okay. It's that time where we're like, let's talk.
Yes, let's talk.
Let's talk about Holy Hell.
Yeah.
All right. So Will Allen is the documentarian for Buddhafield, specifically
right. So
for
he
him.
was in, his sister was in the cult initially, and then he and their middle sister also joined. And then he kind of became like the official videographer / producer of all of the films that they would produce, like the propaganda films and the artistic films.
Yeah.
So he has like all of this footage from his time as like this teacher's personal videographer. Insane.
And assistant, and soon will later sexual object.
Yes.
Let's just say it. But yeah, Will Allen, was a film student. Like he graduated from film school. So he had dreams, and he was originally from here. I think he was from Long Beach, and he had dreams to be a film director, and then he ends up, being in this cult. And he collected, footage, 2 decades of footage that, made this documentary huge.
Yeah. I mean, it's, I think, one of the most like in-depth looks inside of a cult.
Oh yeah,
because you're seeing like all of these like personal meetings that like you wouldn't be able to see had he not been filming. You could maybe hear someone retelling it, but to actually see the ceremonies is very intense.
There are several times throughout the documentary that I had to press pause and just ask myself, what did I just witness? What did I just see? For me, I mean, like, I was stuck how young and how attractive most of the members were when the cult started. They were very young and very attractive. They seemed more willing to surrender their power and themselves to the teacher or Michel more readily than most people who joined Scientology, in my opinion. who are looking for help and looking to get more self-awareness, unlike, Ron Hubbard's or Charles Manson's
Totally.
robots. But in the
Yes.
end, they kind of become Michel's robots.
That was the thing that was like so striking to me, is that first of all, every man in the Buddhafield cult could get it. Like every single time, I'm just like, oh yeah, he's cute. Oh yeah, he's really cute. Like, oh. So I would have for sure joined this cult, because apparently that's all it takes.
This is the time of the podcast where we ask Bryce who he would have slept with in the cult.
Who wouldn't he have? That's the real question. Oh, she's thirsty, friends.
Very thirsty. Take a sip.
Sip
Of your juice, Shelby, right there. Shelby, take your juice.
But that's the thing I think that I found so interesting, is that for such a long duration, they really were a sort of force for good.
Yes.
And the community was so lovely and like positive. And they even said, like, we would joke that like if we were a cult, at least we were a good cult. That's like a line from the film.
Yeah.
And I just think, like, they're doing all of this beautiful community service, and they're so connected to one another. And it's almost like, yeah, there's like this eccentric uncle who's kind of like leading it.
Yeah.
But really, it's them connecting to one another in a really selfless, beautiful way. Mm-hmm. There's like this one story in particular, and this man is describing one of his services was to make like fruit salad. And I was getting so emotional during that part.
Goldstein. That was
Yes.
his last name. I think his first name was Jeremy.
I couldn't focus because his eyes are
He
so beautiful.
was so beautiful. I was like, wow.
Could not focus.
And his teeth, I was like, damn.
I know. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
Him and the one... I can't. That's not the point. I'm sorry. Okay.
Bryce is thirsty.
I just need to focus. Yeah, it's a whole thing. But he's describing making these fruit salads, and they're like fruit salad mosaics. They are the most beautiful food creations.
Oh, yeah.
With like carved fruit and beautiful portraitures and landscapes out of fruit. And they were being put in a blender to make like a fruit smoothie, and he kept making them because he like in his heart felt like he was making them for God, and so it didn't matter what happened to them.
Yeah, I remember that.
And I was like so choked up by that. I was like, what a beautiful, selfless act.
Yeah, and
of
he
like
put a
love.
lot of thought and time and love into it.
And that's how they all were. They all
were
talked
gorgeous.
about it.
Yeah.
Just really like, well, I would like work so that I could help and like donate, and like we would come together and like raise the funds, and like no one would go hungry. And it's this beautiful, it starts out and it's so well intentioned.
Yeah.
But
that's the beginning.
Yes.
They all had well intentions. They were,
Yes.
like I said before, they're all lost souls. And they were just looking for a sense of community, and that's how Will Allen got sucked into it, because his sisters were in the group first, right?
His oldest sister was,
That's right.
and then him, and then they brought their middle sister in.
Mm-hmm.
And she's my favorite. She does not have time for any of it. She's like, yeah, I was in it, but I was like pretty skeptical, and let me tell you some tea.
She's very lucid.
She is like I love her. She's like the voice of reason through the whole film.
She is.
Love it. And then, it's that thing where if you have a group of people looking for fulfillment, and a person who is providing them the, quote, way to that fulfillment, that is a very susceptible relationship to exploitation. Because you have people who are looking for an answer, and you have a person who's looking for adoration by telling them, like, it's through me. I will show you the way. So it becomes this, like, very codependent relationship between the people who are receiving God, quote unquote, through Michel, Andreas, the teacher, whatever you want to call him.
Yes.
And then he is receiving just constant, we love you, we need you, you're my whole life, you're my whole... And his ego is just being inflated. And if you look at where this is happening in the timeline, all of a sudden, this sort of satanic panic of the late 80s, early 90s is gripping the country, and cults are sort of being targeted, if you will, by external forces. And I think that paranoia, coupled with his incredibly inflated ego, is where it starts to turn. So
Yeah.
now he's super paranoid. He's afraid that the cult's going to break up and that he's going to lose all of his influence over this group of people.
Mm-hmm.
And so that initially spurns their move to Texas. But then Waco happens
Yes.
like 30 minutes north. It's so close. And I think that just doubles down and he goes insane.
Yes, that's true. That is true because like they ended up moving to Austin. They ended up I think one of the followers had put a lot of money down onto a house, this huge commune.
Yes.
And they are there for a while. Now how about this? Like how about we do this? Like what was, I guess a good way to explain this is like what was the group's way of getting newbies to come in, and then
Recruitment, yes.
let's talk about the recruitment,
Yes.
and let's also talk about the teachings.
Yes.
Because I know like we're going like all over the place, and
I
people are
know,
like, well, what
there's
were
so
they
much,
teaching
yes.
besides yoga and making smoothies?
That is so I think there's like several. The reason I brought that up is that there are several stages.
Oh, there
and
were
so
several.
I think in stage 1, while it's still based here in Los Angeles, it really is mostly just about yoga, clean living, communal service, and connecting to God through the beauty around you in the moment.
Yes.
So his teachings, I mean, and you see the footage, he's very calm. They're in the ocean, they're in the forest, they're dancing with nature. It is very hippie-esque, but it's a very pure kind of expression of like them in the water releasing their past traumas, and him saying like, if you live in the past, you're shackled by it. If you are anxious for the future, you're stealing from yourself. Your happiness is within you now. These sort of like very WeHo-esque, semi-spiritual ideas, and then like they sing a song. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So that would be like stage 1. And I think that's where most of the original members got plugged in, is this like beautiful group of people living a beautiful clean lifestyle, serving one another, and like experiencing God in nature. That's like the purest form of what this group was. And that's like what we'll call like stage 1, I guess, for lack of a better term.
They were all doing yoga.
Yes.
In my thinking, like Michel used meditation, dancing, and nature along with therapy. What was the crack in the foundation is that there was no processing.
Right.
There was this crack, and of course, since the cult was smaller, the members felt more bonded to the leader, and you know that's how it all started. Like there was this bond, and people were like attracted to that as well.
Totally.
And it was like it started in sessions with meditation, the cleansing sessions, and the yoga sessions, and then it spawned from there.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think again, when you were, they're seeing this man and he's their therapist and he's their leader and he's their activities coordinator.
Yeah.
And he's saying all of these things. And the first like cult like declaration is like no sex. Like he really is against sexuality.
No sex, no drugs.
Yeah. And the drugs like I can see with like the clean living and all of that.
Right.
But he was really adamant that they like not have
no sex, no masturbation, no nothing.
Yeah. So for the first bit, they all do like kind of adhere to that, but like you're gonna put a group of like stunningly beautiful people together. Like, come on, grow up.
Yeah, you saw how touchy feely everyone was.
Yeah, I mean they're like naked in the ocean. Like shit's gonna pop up, figuratively, literally, biblically. Like I don't know. So then I would say stage 2 of the teaching is in Texas, where it really they're actively recruiting.
Oh yeah,
people are coming. I think the group grows to its biggest size in Texas. There's some people still in LA. There's some people in Texas. They're flooding in.
I think they're almost at 100, right?
Yeah, it's like really ballooned to its like heyday.
Yeah,
they're producing all of this like work. And the teaching does sort of shift from experiencing God to a more protecting the cult and protecting the teacher and elevating the teacher's craft, if you will. Like all of the dancing is focused around him.
That's the one thing I couldn't stand so much about him.
Yes.
Is just the dancing, and it's always about. That's when you know you're in a cult. That's one of the things. Is like when everything is about the leader.
And they even said that they're like, we just would say like, well, when did this switch from being about finding God within ourselves to being about him and like his needs?
Oh my, yes, I 100% agree with that. And I have something right here to plug it in. So like, cults are about grasping and preserving absolute and unconditional control. That's something that I was like learning while researching. And cults are fueled and they thrive on control. So the willingness to surrender control comes from excessive devotion to the leader and the leader's vision, Michel's vision. So the leader's personal agenda is presented in this like universal elixir. I have the answers to the meaning of life. Just take a sip of this elixir. And one that eradicates both personal and global moral, ethical, spiritual maladies. And the follower's faith becomes both the provider and the enabler.
Yes.
And while researching, I came across something like that you were, gearing towards, a little tidbit from Alan. And he stated in an interview with CNN.com in 2016, it echoes exactly what you're saying. He states the master's message no longer was about connecting with God. It was all about the master. The songs ceased to be about God anymore, and we were all about master. The events, homemade movies, ballets, as well as the vibrations inside of us were no longer about God. They were about master. Instead of connecting to God's love, it was connect to my love. This is all that is said in the documentary. And my love is Michel's love. That's who is he referring to. So like, that plugs into exactly what you were just describing.
Yeah. And it's such a like crazy shift, but it's like, he didn't start out there. It starts with a decade of experiencing God, and that he happens to be the guide to God, not a God in their like world, if you will.
Yeah.
The first thing I think that he really does that's like super manipulative, and like his first like assertion of control over them, is in I almost said The Happening, but that's the tree movie. The Knowing. Thank you.
That's where I wanted to go to. Yeah, The Knowing.
That is the first time.
That was creepy.
That it's almost like a decade in that they do that.
Yes.
And it's really shady because only some of the members got to experience the knowing.
Yeah.
And so what a smart, I don't know how aware he was. I think he was very calculating.
Oh, yeah.
But to give it to members and then sort of be like to the people he didn't, quote, give it to, like, well, you're just not like spiritually ready enough.
You're not spiritually.
To then double them down.
Yeah. Oh, I remember that.
I was so mad.
So FYI, guys, The Knowing was a session. It highlights... it's like an exercise they called Shotki, a transfer of energy between the master, Michel, and the student, and it's most intense. It transfers the energy from like his inner being to the student. It's what the followers describe as it's like flashing lights and colors. It's better than an LSD trip and an overwhelming sense of bliss. And then, the knowing was no less than making a direct connection with God. It was the direct hotline to God, in other words. And it wasn't he wasn't giving it to all of his students, like you said, but it's what kept people coming back. Because people were like, no, I deserve to know God. And I deserve to be a part of that direct line to him. And that's, in Michel's mind, that was smart.
Oh, yeah.
That's how he kept them around.
It's so crazy that, like, I'll give it to some people. The people that don't, I'll tell them that it's their fault they didn't get it. So the people that had it will want this high again. The people that didn't get it will work harder to get it.
Oh, yeah. And it's word of mouth. Like, you had no idea. Like people were, like, in a state of, like, they were fainting. They were crying.
Oh, yeah. It was full on, like, Beatles performance level, like just insanity.
They couldn't describe it. Like they needed to be on their own for a while. Like that's, when people saw that, they're like, I want that.
Yes.
I want that. Yeah.
So then we fast forward to Texas and it's sort of all of that same level of devotion, but now it's to the fulfillment of his goals. And I think the part that like broke my heart, or like, excuse me, I just choked on coffee. I got so upset. The part as people who are in the arts that made me so upset was like they're describing these productions that they would put on, and just knowing, as we know, what it takes to get a show up, and watching them like sitting in the room and they're sewing these costumes and there's these big elaborate sets, and this building alone is like a literal cathedral, and like all of this work, all of this money, all of this energy, and they're dancing and it's beautiful. I mean, he's not a very good dancer. Like, let's just start there. Some of them were, but
former keyword was former.
Yeah,
dancer.
so he's like hopping around the stage, and I was like, oh no,
your form is off, honey.
But they would like put these. They would rehearse for a year. They would put on these shows one time, for themselves. No one else saw them. It's not like they raised money for them.
No,
or like through the tickets or whatever. It was just through them and for them, aka him and him. Like, it's just the most narcissistic, abusive, like for some reason that affected me as much as any of the other abuses that he like met out.
Oh my
God, you made them put on a full show and no one came and saw it. Like, oh,
but
God.
It was recorded. I mean, we had, but still, all that for no audience.
And
it was just for their
performance.
For a performance. What? For me, nothing compares with the creepiness of David McAvey. FYI, Church of Scientology leader, the current one, and some of Hubbard's followers, you know, and I don't know, that they're neck and neck at that point with me.
Well, and it really is like in Texas, they're really actively recruiting people. So they're going into like local yoga classes.
Oh, yeah.
Teaching. Many of them were fitness trainers or yoga instructors. Actively recruiting, getting more members to kind of sustain this like community that they had. But it's, you know, starting to get so wrapped up in him and his paranoia and his sort of like machinations of individuals, especially in these like hypnotherapy sessions. They've essentially exposed themselves to being manipulated. Like, he has a perfect system where it's like the whole point of this group is to like serve what I tell you, and like every week you have to be doing this therapy. And then while they're still in Texas, and this is what I think, if we will, like stage 3 of the teaching, is like the scandal and then the Hawaii move.
Exactly. We'll go into now the sexual misconduct.
Yes.
Because this was like very heartbreaking for me, and other things that came about that we'll talk about. But
look,
stage
here's the
3.
Having grown up in a very religious, I almost said cult. I'm not in a cult.
No, you're raised
but
Christian.
Raised incredibly religiously. It's the people who argue and rail against, quote, sin the most, who are, in my experience, the ones that are struggling with it. They are so against it because it's hitting too close to home. And the reason I bring that up is because in this instance with the teacher, he's all about beauty, he's all about youth and no sex and a clean life. And then you start to look into his personal life and his personal existence, and it's like he's constantly wearing makeup and it's just caked on. And he's like constantly
his plastic surgery.
He's getting plastic surgery,
and
but he's like
are not comfortable with that.
Yeah, and so it really does shift. So it's like all the things that he's saying are important. He like doesn't clearly believe because he's not abiding by those teachings, which has always been my experience. It's like if someone's like, "Oh, homosexuality is bad," they're probably going to be the Republican senator who has the sex scandal. Not to like typify people, but just in that metaphor.
Right.
You know what I mean? Whatever the actual thing may be, the ones who are the loudest against it are usually the ones who you'll like catch. You know what I mean? And I think that applies to him. So he's like, don't have sex. Meanwhile, this letter comes out, the email.
Oh, yeah.
And it basically...
That was the crack of the foundation.
That was the whole
That
thing.
was the whole shake.
Yes. And so it says, like, a member was leaving, and he basically, like, lists out all these accusations against the teacher, talking about the years of sexual abuse that he's been, I don't even know what the word is, abusing, I guess, the male members of the group in these private sessions.
They called it the box sessions because there was this thing that Will Allen would talk about where he would have to go and get the box. And that was the creepiest thing. So Allen and his friends, Goldstein and Johnston, Goldstein, beautiful man, Johnston was another individual, argued that they were never interested in the guru sexually. They were all much younger than Michel Andreas, the teacher. When they say that he groomed them and turned them into his concubines, like in the picture that I posted on Instagram with their faces, you can see all of them there. Those were his concubines.
And basically, he would, because they were dancing all the time, he would have, quote, personal masseuses.
Yes.
To like work him out as their service. They were like, their service was to help serve him personally.
Oh.
So they were literally his right-hand people at all times.
Here's a little tidbit from Allen, and this is what creeped me out. According to Allen on CNN.com, Michel was a creature of habit, and they say he reserved a day for each of them. Allen was Thursdays, Goldstein was Tuesdays and Saturdays, and Johnston, who was straight, always drew Mondays. They had been taught to bow in submission as a way to connect with God. And that is how their guru groomed them, they say. That Michel will ask him to go get the black box, referring to like the television. And Allen would always try to kind of like distract him. And what he meant by the box is put on the porn because I need to get aroused before I have intercourse with you.
And it's just so like, so this email comes out and it's sort of the first crack in the group. You could argue that the move to Texas was a little bit of one.
Yeah.
But because it was an external force, there was a man trying to get the cult broken up from the outside. They kind of rally around him and all move to Texas. In Texas, this is the first crack from a member within. And it kind of divides the community between people who think it's plausible and are starting to withdraw from the group.
Yeah.
And people who kind of rally around the teacher. And it's so crazy because in the interviews, one of the people who was like staunchly defending Michel was one of the men who was being raped. Like that level of disconnect is so terrifying. And this is where you really start to see the very real mind control that these people are in. Especially all three of, I think there were many more who were being abused.
Oh, yeah.
But these three men in particular were like his, like he would wake them up in the middle of the night and be like, we're going, like we have to go right now. And they would just do what he said. They would like, they were at his beck and call.
Yeah.
And I think for them, it's just so heartbreaking because they, on the one hand, they're not leaving. They're not able to, like, free themselves because it's so wrapped up. And he would tell them these things, like, if you leave, you'll die. And, like, I'm wrestling with God for your soul. Like, you just have to do what I say. It's like...
they were very manipulated.
They were 100%, like, brainwashed. And, like, you know, the one is, like, describing how that would like happen, and he would be like trying to get away, and the teacher, instead of saying like or acknowledging that like he was raping them, he'd be like, who are you trying to push away, like what is it? And he would try and trick them into thinking that like they were experiencing like a childhood trauma, and then that was why they were rejecting him.
Yeah.
When in reality, they just didn't want to sleep with this man.
Yeah.
And so it was like this really twisted, manipulative. They're on the surface the closest to him, but they're also being abused by him, and then they're the ones defending him and covering up for him. And he never really did a very good job of keeping everyone in the dark, so no one knew that it was happening to anyone else, and none of the women knew that it was happening at all.
Yeah.
Because he was really only targeting like the men in the group, unfortunately.
Let's talk about what he did with the women, because that was also very heartbreaking.
Right, and he was a monster to everybody.
God, I mean, the men, it was horrific, but some of the women too endured a lot of, in my opinion, mental abuse and manipulation.
Oh my goodness, yes.
And there was that one woman, one of the followers that they interviewed in the documentary, that she had fallen in love with one of the followers. They had a secret romance. They slept together. She got pregnant. And she tells Michel, "Oh, I'm pregnant. I feel bad. What do I do?" He's like, "Get rid of it." Mm-hmm. And she's like, "No, this child was made out of love. This wasn't a mistake. I want to keep it. We want to keep it." He's like, "No, get rid of it.
Get rid of it, or you're out of the group."
Yeah. And she goes ahead and she has the abortion.
Several.
Yeah.
And it's all these levels. There's people that he's forcing to get plastic surgery so he can see if it's safe or how it's affects them.
They were the guinea pigs
before he will get it.
Oh yeah.
And he's forcing women to get abortions, and he's telling people who they can and can't be with, and he's raping men in their private sessions. Mm-hmm. And he's telling women, the one that he told her he would kick her out if she kept her dog, and just at every level breaking these people down who started out as just a group of people who were supporting each other. Yeah. And now they're under his sway, and he's just playing with their lives because he can. Mm-hmm.
And I know he did, what did he do to one of to Alan's sisters too? He did something with one of them. I think he told her something that she needed to lose weight, or she needed to get something done to herself, and she was completely objective with him. Mm-hmm. And he does this thing, and you even mentioned it too, where whenever they would kind of challenge him, he would do this thing where he would tell them, "You better drop your mind.
Drop your mind.
Drop your mind. Drop your mind."
Any kind of resistance was an affront to God. It was not that you were right or had a valid opinion. It's that you weren't open to the spiritual teaching. Mm-hmm. So it's a way to break people down. Yeah. So this allegation comes out, and he essentially goes to Hawaii with the people who still support him. Yes. And they kind of abandon the commune in Texas.
He abandons it. He goes off with another follower. It was a female follower. Mm-hmm. They sell. Something happens. They just.
Well, she confronts him and says because now it starts to come out, and they're furious.
They're very furious. He leaves in the middle of the night and deserts them.
And she basically tells him, "You have to go, and we won't press charges. But if you resist this at all, we're going to prosecute." So she skulks him off to Hawaii to get him away from his prey, essentially.
Exactly. So that leads us to, where is Michel now?
Indeed.
Where he is now in Lani Kai, Hawaii. Mm-hmm. That's where he's at. So according to Alan, they said that they're hearing disturbing things from the friends that actually followed him to Hawaii. Oh. So when he deserted them, there were actually a couple of people that went to go look for him, and they were very loyal to him still. So they said that the master knew that, a lot of people were kind of after him from the States, and that he had whatever followers there, and he is still collecting new acolytes and calling himself Reggie, which is God King.
God King.
The God King.
Ew.
Concerned neighbors say that he has taken to walking the streets of Lani Kai in disguise with a cane and wearing a white surgical mask, and sometimes his Speedos.
Oh, God.
He has taken up residence on the island with a new band of followers. And he has already a new commune that Alan and his friends, who are no longer a part of Buddhafield, they call it the Fortress. And it's built that way. You see it in the documentary towards the end. There's signs that say, no trespassing. There's fences surrounding him. And at one point, they kind of get a glimpse at, the inside of it. And they see, there he is. Michel walking around in his Speedos, his followers, just kind of just following him everywhere. And then there's that interaction on the beach.
Which is my waspy little heart could barely handle it. It's like, oh my God. No, it's so much.
So there's a scene where Alan and his friends find out where he is. They kind of stake him out for a couple of days, and then they kind of like approach him when him and his followers are at this beach. They're just sitting there, and then Alan goes up to him, and I'm like, oh God, something's gonna happen.
And then they just stare at each other for like 45 years. It's so uncomfortable.
I was like, oh my God, what's happening? What's going on? And then you mentioned, he's like,
are you being a good boy? I was like, oh God, just boil my skin off of my body.
Oh. No, I will tell you this. When I was researching Lonnie Kai and his group, I was on their Facebook page.
Oh God.
And there was this gentleman who was, he was in the military. He was in the military, and him and his wife moved to Lonnie Kai. And he said that he lost his wife to this cult.
Oh, no.
And in his letter, I'll go over it briefly, but he pretty much states that he was stationed there, him and his wife. His wife just had given birth to their son. And she decides, I'm going to go try this yoga class.
Recruitment.
Guess whose yoga class is it? So she takes a yoga class. Okay. She starts taking it 3 times a week, 4 times a week, 6 times a week. So he's noticing, okay, like this is really good for her. This is what she needs. So he's like, okay, it's really cool. Like she's learning to eat. She's really, getting back in her state of mind. She had just given birth.
Wow.
Then they tell her, if you're really into this, this whole world, this lifestyle, then you should be a part of the teaching certification program. So he goes on and explains that the wife, just without his acknowledgement, without even talking to him about it, pays $40,000 to take the
$40,000.
Oh, get this. She pays the $40,000.
Oh my God.
6 days a week, 12 hours each day. She's a mom. Oh, so she signs up, pays for it, is going to take it, and it's a 6-week program, and tells him, don't worry about the child. My family, my mom and dad are flying here, so they're going to help take care of our baby. He's like, okay, first off, the in-laws are coming. And second, when were you going to tell me about this? And third, $40,000, we have a child to raise. Like, what the hell? So he notices a deterioration in their marriage, in their personal relationship. In her, she becomes more distant. Her time is mainly spent with this group. And eventually they end up divorcing. She leaves her husband
Oh my God.
to join this group. So she's a part of the fortress. He goes on in the letter to state that they're separated, they're divorced. He had given her full custody of the child, surprisingly, and with the advantage of visitations 2 to 3 times a week. And he said that after 1 month, things were okay. He was seeing his child on a regular basis.
Oh no.
And then he was noticing that he's seeing him less and less. And as of today, he hasn't seen his child in several months, nor his wife.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And this is all to do with God King Raiji and his cult followers. He's like, they're a fucking cult. They use yoga as, a deterrent. Like, it's all a sham. Like,
Oh my
they
God.
took my wife, they took my child.
That makes me so sad.
It's really sad. I found that little letter like while researching, because I was like, what are they doing there?
Right.
And it just like it popped up in their Facebook
Well, and
group.
that's the thing that's so crazy is that with the cults like the Manson family and a lot of the cults in the 70s especially, they have such violent, fantastical ends.
Oh, yeah.
They're very of the time. But this cult has now spanned almost 30 years. I mean, think about how much has changed in our country since the 80s, in our lives in the last 5 years. So for this group to survive and adapt and sort of continue on over these very tumultuous 3 decades is so insane to me. Because I remember as soon as I was watching it, I was like, wait, this took place in the 80s and the 90s? Like, who the hell joins a cult in the early 2000s? Like, what?
Yeah.
We have the internet. Like, I don't understand how someone could join a cult in the modern era.
Well, remember
But it
American
just-
Horror Story?
yes.
They did their last season on cults.
Yes.
So, you have these political cults.
Totally.
And we are now, in my opinion, I feel like we're a nation truly divided.
Oh, yes.
And I feel like, Michel, a.k.a. Jaime, a.k.a. the God King, is really taking it advantage of it.
100%.
People feel lost right now, and he's created this community of love and spiritualism and mysticism, and all in all, it's a cult.
Oh, yeah.
It's benefiting him, and it's his security blanket.
Yeah.
And not a lot of people know that, or they're just too blind to even see it.
Yeah. Ugh.
So all in all, guys,
Just don't join cults.
don't join cults.
But here's the thing. I do CrossFit. CrossFit's a cult. So I don't know. Do what you're gonna do, I guess. Live your life.
That's true. How are they a cult? You explained it to me.
It ticks all the boxes. If you look at what a cult needs in order to be classified as such by the government, if you will, it's basically a group of people, like you were saying at the beginning, devoted to a common teaching or a common ideal that affects their lifestyle, the people that they hang out with, the clothing that they wear, the food that they eat, and the way that they spend their time. That is CrossFit. It's a cult of fitness. So again, I sound like phase one of a Buddhafield, essentially. But at least it's a good cult.
This is a fitness
because
cult.
it is. It's all the people that I talk to at the gym, we all use. Oh, and that's another thing. You use agreed upon vernacular. So there's all this terminology that cults use that you just understand and adapt into your life, and it's how you spend your time. And technically by all standards, CrossFit is a cult. I just also happen to not believe in it as a religion.
Right.
You know what I mean? For now. We'll see. I don't know.
I'm just using it for cardio and for my glutes. My glutes are looking really good.
They're so good.
They're very tight. My hand accidentally brushed upon them. It was on accident, but I was
you.
wow, they're really firm.
Thank you. Oh my God.
So according to Jayanti Tam of Huffington Post, here are the 10 signs that the group you joined is a cult. We're going to go over them real quickly before we take a promo break. All right. So number 1, the leader and group are always correct, and anything the leader does can be justified. Number 2, questions, suggestions, and critical inquiry are forbidden. Number 3, members incessantly scramble with cramped schedules, activities full of largely meaningless work based on the leader's agenda. Number 4, followers are meant to believe that they are never good enough. Required dependency, this is number 5, required dependency upon the leader and or group for even the most basic problem solving. Number 6, reporting on members for disobedient actions or thoughts is mandated and rewarded. Number 7, monetary, sexual, and servile labor is expected to gain promotion. 8, the outside world, often including your family and friends, is presented as rife with impending catastrophe, evil, and temptations. Number 9, recruitment and new members is designed to be purposefully upbeat, vague, and all about their operations of a leader and group. And number 10, former members are shunned and perceived as hostile.
Yes.
So
Drop
these
your mind.
So these are the 10 signs that the group you joined is a cult.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind. Or as what is it? My Favorite Murder. They have that favorite, the funny quote "You're in a cult. Call your dad."
Oh yeah, I love that. I love that. Call your dad.
Call your dad. All right, guys. We're gonna take a quick promo break before we hit on the paranormal aftermath. So you don't want to miss this. So there was no real paranormal aftermath with the Buddhafield cult, but it turns out that one of the producers of this documentary was dealing with ghosts on his own.
What a twist.
I know, during the filming of this documentary, so we'll go over that shortly.
Yes.
Psst, Bryce.
Hey girl.
Do you know what an RSS feed is?
Really smooth Starbucks?
I thought the same thing too, but nope, it's really simple stuff, or according to Wikipedia, it's a really simple syndication.
Right. That's the thing that Blueberry provided us with when we started our podcast.
Yes, let's be real. None of us knew where to start out while creating our podcast in the beginning, and Blueberry helped us out a lot.
I know. They seriously make everything easy for us podcasters.
Blueberry hosting is highly optimized for using WordPress with PowerPress. Blueberry makes publishing your podcast in 3 easy steps.
Step 1, produce your podcast. 2, write your blog post. 3, publish.
It's like a recipe. WordPress plus PowerPress plus Blueberry hosting equals success.
I like that, a recipe.
Hosting with Blueberry also allows you to be in control. Plus, there are no third-party sites to log into, no contracts, so you can cancel anytime. It's optimized for iTunes and creates support for all platforms.
So, if you're browsing for a new hosting site, or if you're planning to start your own podcast, then Blueberry is the perfect place.
Head on over to our website, hollyweirdparanormal.blueberry.net, scroll down our blog post, and click on the Blueberry tab link.
And use our promo code WEIRD if you're interested in receiving a free month by signing up with Blueberry.com.
Free is a good thing. Start creating with Blueberry.com.
All right, but now I am craving Starbucks.
Let's go all drive.
Yes.
Hey guys, we're back. All right, guys, so we're back for the ghosts. Yes. Ready for this? So, like I said before, there was no paranormal aftermath with the Buddhafield cult. However, it turns out that one of the producers of the documentary of Holy Hell is living in a supposedly haunted ex-military base in Laurel Canyon.
Gasp.
Guess what street in the canyon?
Stop.
Just guess, Bryce, where this house resides.
Is it on the same one as the Taints? Oh, no.
We just did an episode of this.
Which, on the, oh, come on. Come on, coffee. Kick in.
Here we go.
Yep.
The Wonderland.
Oh, that was my next guess.
It's off of Wonderland
Stop.
Avenue.
Don't live there, friends.
So, actor Jared Leto, known for starring in such films such as Suicide Squad, The Dallas Buyers Club, and Requiem for a Dream, as well as his career-making role as the character Jordan Catalano on the hit 90s TV show My So-Called Life, is currently enjoying an unusual living situation. You see, Leto's home is a converted Air Force base on the tip of the Hollywood Hills in the canyons, in Laurel Canyon, off of Wonderland Avenue, and it's apparently haunted.
Oh my god! Literally, when I saw that he was a producer, I just went, "What?"
They're always producers.
Yeah,
A lot of them are. A lot of these actors and actresses are producers.
Gotta make that money.
No, this is what you like when you have money. You just dump it somewhere.
Dump it somewhere. Feel free to produce anything you want in my life, Jared Leto.
Well, it turns out that Jared Leto saw a rough cut of the documentary or whatever they shot. I think it was like not the whole documentary, or I think just the preliminary stages of it. And then he thought to himself he needed to be a part of it.
Wow.
So in the midst of this, he was like, hey, he reached out to Will. He's like, hey, let me help. Let me be one of the producers.
Whoa.
And Will was like, of course, Jared Leto, I would hit that. So Jared Leto starts to work on the film after he buys this $5 million home. It's a beautiful home, by the way.
Of course.
And then something started to surface. So here's a little background on the converted Air Force base that he lives in. So this is a 50,000 square foot base, once referred to as Lookout Mountain Air Force Station. And it was built during World War II, and it includes a bomb shelter, weapons vault, and radar station.
Oh my god.
Of course, it's not like Jared's like, oh, this is so cool.
He's listening right now. Oh.
So the Laurel Canyon compound, often referred to as the Lookout Mountain Laboratory and or the Lookout Mountain Air Force Station, was originally built in the early 40s and was used until the late 60s as a military film studio, where amongst other classified projects and small army of like filmmakers and photographers with top secrets clearance made training films and documented military research on atomic bomb tests.
Oh my god.
Yeah, so a lot of those, like, you know, those little like black and white grainy films that you see of like bombs going off, they were actually done there.
Yeah.
They're miniature models that they filmed at this location. It employed over 250 people in its time. And then I found out that it was used as a soundstage for, get this, gay porn in the 80s.
Sure, that makes sense. That all
Do you
checks
remember?
out. Look, gays in the military go hand in hand. I don't care what they say.
Like we said in the last episode, it's like porn all came from like the canyons.
Oh, it
and
really
the
did, though.
valley.
I know.
It's on the cusp right there. So it was used as a soundstage for gay porn, and then in the 90s, it was briefly used as a rehab facility. We'll go into that. It's a lot of tea. It's just crazy how much stuff went on in this place. So according to Leto, he told Kelly Ripa and Ryan Seacrest on their show 2 years ago that his staff had a few interesting, unexplainable occurrences. So Leto tells Kelly and Ryan, here's one of his stories. I had a handyman that was downstairs in the bunker, and he had someone touch him on the shoulder. He turned around, no one was there.
No.
Leto adds, he came running up the stairs and quit on the spot. So,
Oh, man.
yeah, so something's downstairs in the bunker. And then there was another story of full body apparitions. So there was a story of Leto's maids, one of his maids who was in the house early one morning. Leto was out, and she was spooked because she claimed that she saw a man in military garb standing in the I think it was the dining room. And when she turned to look at him, he appeared and just disappeared right before her.
Oh.
Yeah, so that was another story. So Leto has also stated that he has never seen anything, but there are times where he'll go into certain areas of his house and the vibes would feel off. He would get feelings of cold spots, but he hasn't really seen anything. So the house is currently around Lookout Mountain Road. So there's two theories to this, what I think might be the cause of these happenings. There's two theories. So the house, like I said before, is around Lookout Mountain Road, on the corner of Laurel Canyon. I don't know if you remember, like the country store.
Oh, yeah.
It's like down the street from there.
I'm never going again.
So here's the things. So that intersection happens to be really haunted.
No, don't say that.
When you're at that when you're at that stoplight, it's like right there, it's like really close to the country store. It's a creepy intersection at that stoplight at Lookout Mountain and Laurel Canyon.
Yeah.
It's really creepy, even at night. And I've driven there late at night.
Oh, yeah, same. It's the best way to get over the hill sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to avoid
Or it's
101.
scenic. Like, there's so many times that I'm just, like, up there. It's so beautiful.
It is, even during the day.
Faster,
but at night, it could be really, really creepy.
Oh, God.
So, motorists have claimed to see full-body apparitions of people in period clothes. They're walking on the side of the road, or they're at the intersection, and they'll disappear. There's one report, it was from a woman who claimed to have seen a black horse and carriage crossing the intersection at Laurel and Lookout Mountain.
Damn.
Yeah. So there is activity
Is it
there.
weird that horses freak me out less? I'm apparently fine with horse ghosts.
Like
Horse ghost, yes. Jared Leto ghost, no.
Really?
I don't know. That story was like, oh, that's kind of cute. Apparently, I'm fine with horse ghosts.
I would be okay with Jared Leto ghost.
Oh, girl.
I've seen him in person.
Really?
Oh, so me and my girlfriend 2 years ago, we were hiking up Runyon Canyon, and we stopped to tie. She had to tie her shoe. I look up, and there's Jared Leto coming out from the bushes. He was taking a leak, and he was just coming out of the bushes.
Celebrities,
It looked
they're just like us.
And yes, and like he looked like shit.
Oh, yeah.
He looked like he looked a mess. He had his long hair, but it was like perfectly ombre'd, and then he had his beard, and then he looks at you with these piercing blue eyes, and I froze, and I was like, oh my God. It's like I just saw Jesus, you know?
Literally.
He looks like Jesus.
Yeah, he really does. Like blue-eyed Jesus.
He does. He looks really good, though.
White Christians rejoice. Blue-eyed Jesus exists, and it's Jared Leto.
Okay, and another another theory is, I don't know if you remember back in 2012, 2013, 180 rehab facility. There was a huge drama with that.
Oh my God.
So it's on the Hollywood Reporter, guys. So this was a famous celebrity drug facility that you literally would spend like $90,000 a month to go into rehab if you had an Oxycontin addiction, alcohol addiction. Ozzy Osbourne and his children were a part of this facility at one point. But there was some severe tea that was spilled because they had 2 wrongful death lawsuits that they were dealing with, along with money laundering. So they were taking people's money and accepting them into this beautiful, well-furnished, posh rehab facility, but nothing was being done. No treatments were being done. So they claimed that there are 2 deaths at this facility.
Whoa.
So one being a woman, and they mentioned this in one of their locations because they had several, and I know that this was at their Beverly Hills one. One woman committed suicide in a bathtub. She drowned herself. And then there was another one of a young boy, 20 years old, who was a son of this multi-billionaire mogul, this real estate mogul from New York, and he had slit his wrists. So they didn't disclose what location he passed in. So I don't know, could it have been here at this location? Because they were stationed here at one point.
Oh.
That could be another theory. Could it be like his ghost that they're feeling? Who knows?
Yeah.
But then again, like we talked about with layers,
Yes.
Laurel Canyon, I don't know, maybe that this spot is just attracting all these other elements from outside.
Yes. That, I mean, if you think of it as like a little sheet cake, Laurel Canyon is the thickest slice. You know what I mean?
Ooh.
It's I really want cake.
Oh, okay.
But it's just like at the baseline of it, you have all of the First Nations energy of all of the people that were there before it was colonized.
Yes.
And so if you just start there and then the tumultuous history of California and then through, like you were saying, like, yeah, fine, the porn industry is not haunted, but it's certainly a lot of energy being released. Like, and I'm not trying to be cheesy, but like there is a lot there of like just the energy that requires and where your life is to be doing porn and the just constant like semi-abusive job that it really is. That's a layer. And then like all of these other things that you just start stacking up on top of it.
Yeah, it's still prime real estate.
Yeah, I mean, I still want some cake, so I don't know.
You want some cake with your ghosts?
Yes.
Yes. Does this cake come with ghosts?
Dear Jared Leto, please bring me cake.
Keep
Either
your
way.
hair long.
Or produce my film. I don't know.
Seriously. All right, guys. So that is our episode of the Buddhafield cult. I wonder if you guys have like a craving for a smoothie. Probably you're going to go online and purchase a nice little tangerine Speedo like
Who
Bryce.
wouldn't? Yes.
Yeah. But we are not going to close this episode until we call out our spiritual bays of the week. We have 2. One of the spiritual bays I like to give a shout out to is I Got the Hell Out.
Yes.
You have to listen to this podcast because it's actually hosted by an ex-cult member. Obsessed. All right, I Got the Hell Out hosts Laura and Debbie who dive into Debbie's past experience while in a cult. Yes, a cult podcast with one of the hosts who is an ex-cult member. Debbie spent 10 years in an Old Testament polygamous doomsday cult.
That is
She
insane.
is hilarious.
I'm
so
proud of you, Debbie.
Debbie
out,
got
girl.
out. She got
Yes.
the hell out. She got
Hell
the
yeah,
hell
girl.
out. She's hilarious. I follow them on Instagram.
Yes.
And she'll post pictures of herself like years and years ago, like in this cult, like this is what we wore. And this was
God.
my husband, and this is how we dined. There was this picture where they separated the men from the women in the dining hall. It was crazy.
God,
and then
were her bangs just teased for filth?
oh
Yes.
my God.
Love it.
Yes. That's why she got the hell out.
Yeah, you gotta
No
get
more
out,
bad
girl.
hair days.
Thank goodness.
No more bad hair days.
Get it, girl.
All right. Second, we have, of course, LA Not So Confidential. They have a fascinating podcast, guys. It's only 10 episodes because they are working professionals. Not to mention they're based out of LA. So this LA-based podcast brought to you by 2 forensic psychologists. I was about to say parapsychologists. Dr. Scott and Dr. Shyla, who dissect the intersections where true crime, forensic psychology, and entertainment meet. They
Love it.
are well versed, and each episode gets you even more sucked into their world. I would love to do an episode with them. They did an amazing episode of cults that takes you deep into the mind and world of cult leaders and their followers.
Obsessed.
They are really cool, and I highly recommend that you listen to both of those podcasts, considering that we just talked about cults. Now, if you love Hollyweird Paranormal, we'd love for you to subscribe, rate, and give a review on iTunes. It really helps us out a lot and helps us become a little more visible. You can definitely catch our episodes, guys, on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Google Play, Podknife, Podbay, SoundCloud, Blueberry.
We're everywhere.
We're everywhere, guys. Definitely follow us on Instagram at Hollyweird Paranormal and Facebook at Hollyweird Paranormal. On Twitter, we are HWP Podcast. And if you want to give us a personal hello, you can email us at hollyweirdparanormal@gmail.com.
Yes.
Any last words, Bryce?
Don't join a cult.
Don't join a cult. Eat cake.
Eat cake.
Not laced in cyanide, please.
if you can help it.
All right, guys. So tune in for our next episode because we're going to do an awesome episode on haunted Hollywood theaters. Yes, you don't want to miss it because we're going to take you through a tour down Hollywood Boulevard.
Oh, man.
These theaters are not scary compared to Hollywood Boulevard at night.
Real.
Real nice. All right, guys. Have a good one. Much love. Stay weird.
Bye.
Bye.